If you're looking for more content like this, check out mwpnews.com or bewareofspoilers.com. Good morning and welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam on this very nice first day of the 3-day weekend. With this being Labor Day in America. So I was going to do this yesterday, and then we had an issue with the recording, and I didn't. So we're going to talk today about Adventure Time, Fionna and Cake. I think it's just called Fionna and Cake, to be clear. And we saw these first two episodes, and I think that the first episode being what it is pretty interesting. It gives a major, was it season 4 that opened right after the Return of the Lich? Because, I think it was season 3 of Adventure Time Ends, where Billy comes to Finn and Jake and says, hey, look, we need to get all of the, we need to get all of the crystals or all of the gems from around the kingdoms, put them into the Enchiridion, and it will open a portal to whatever it is, into the multiverse, and we can go in there. And they go out and do that. They get all these things, and they montage through it. And they put all of them in, and then it turns out that Billy's been dead the whole time. The Lich has been wearing his skin, and now Finn and Jake have given the Lich the ability to go into the multiverse, to go and meet Eternity and get one wish granted. Oh wait, no, not Eternity. Eternity was Thor: Love and Thunder. This was, This was Prismo, was his name, voiced by Kumail Nanjiani. So they could go in there and do that. We don't, the season ends, we don't know what the Lich wishes for, but we see the Lich get to Prismo, and then when he gets there, we get to see, we come back, and Finn is living in this alternate universe where nothing happened. The bombs never went off, and Finn is just, a regular kid living in a regular world with a regular dog. Then you get this interesting other idea, where, then we come back from that, and we see this alternate timeline play out. And in this alternate timeline, Finn comes across the crown, and, Marceline tries to warn him not to do it. A really old Marceline tries to warn him not to do it, and then he does it anyway, and sure enough, he ends up being this. He becomes the Ice King. Jake falls into a pool of evil and becomes the Lich, and all is good. And then you end up in basically the same place, but with Finn as the Ice King and Jake as the Lich. And it's an interesting, because then what happens is the bomb goes off and fucks everything up. The point I'm trying to make with that little diatribe that sums up that, and then, the whole time, back in reality, quote-unquote, Jake is just hanging out with Prismo, and the Cosmic Owl just kind of, chilling in the hot tub, eating sandwiches. So they're hanging out there, and so all of that happens, and the point to all this is, the first episode of this show has a major, vibe to it, a major, that premiere vibe to it, where it is Fionna and Cake are, existing in the real world. Fionna has an apartment, she's got this little cat, she's working a dead-end job she hates. We meet characters that we know before, but human versions of them. like Hot Dog Princess and all these other characters, and she just doesn't want to be there. The second episode takes us back to Ooh, which picks up after Adventure Time and after aspects of Distant Lands, where we now have an older Simon, a grown-up Finn, and they are living in, what's it called? They are living in this thing. Simon is basically living out a human zoo experiment where he's showing people what it was like to live in the before times, before the war and all of that, in the 21st century. And he's become tired of that. He feels like his existence doesn't mean anything anymore. So him and Finn go on an adventure. And it's entertaining, and there's a level of blood and cursing in this show that I was not prepared for, to be completely honest. Not that it's a bad thing, but it's just like, I wasn't, like, it happens, like, oh, that is, like, the cursing, I was like, alright, this is not on Adventure Time, but like, the blood was a weird thing, because they didn't do blood on Distant Lands, and I was like, oh, that's odd. The other thing I don't know if I've pointed this out, there is an odd fascination with the Cheers universe in Adventure Time. Someone involved with Adventure Time has to be a massive fan of Cheers and Frasier, which, not that there's anything wrong with that, because those are two fantastic shows, but, like, the Cheers theme has come into play multiple times over the course of in the original show at least, it came into play in a major way in the episode Simon and Marcy. But then, like, the theme for Frasier came in, was being sung by one of the robots in the BMO episode of Distant Lands, and then in this, it's like she's watching Cheers, and it's like, yeah, but, like, is that the only TV show that anyone in this universe watches or cares about? Cheers. So, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm not saying, oh, they shouldn't have done that. What I'm saying is, it is a little, odd that that's the only show that ever gets referenced. But it's fine. But either way, it's like, one of the things that I'm going to posit about this is that, yes, while Ice King has been separated from the crown for a while, and while he has been his own person, and he hasn't been, what was his name? What's it called? He hasn't been, he's been Simon, not Ice King, for quite some time. It seemed like one of the things we have to remember, and part of the reason why I brought up that entire the plot of the episode back in, like, season 3 of the original show, is that one of the Ice King's crown's gems was one of the pieces needed to open the Enchiridion into the portal into the multiverse. Or the space between worlds within the multiverse. And it's kind of important, because this episode ends with him trying to channel Grob, I think. I don't know. All these things sound similar. Grob, Glob, Gob, whatever. Whichever one was the big evil one that was trying to destroy reality in the finale of Adventure Time. That one is the one he's trying to channel the way Betty did. He's trying to bring back Betty, because that's part of it too, is that he went through all these steps to try and save Betty, and then Betty vanished? I don't remember. How did that end? I just watched it recently, too, again. I don't remember. Either way, Betty's no longer there. He wants to bring Betty back. But I think what they're going with here is that because that gem, like, or the way I read it, is that it's like he opens up, like, this portal opens up the back of his head, and his, and Cake flies out of it. And that's one of the running things, too, is people keep asking him, like, oh, you used to write those Fionna and Cake books, like, are they, are you going to keep doing that? Are you going to get back to it? I love those Fionna and Cake books, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, it's cool. And he's like, look, that wasn't me, that was, the Ice King. I can't channel him anymore. And I think one of the things they're playing with is, number one, Ice King is still in there. Somewhere in his brain, the Ice King is still there. Number two, I think that this is existing and this is working for him because he has the what's it called? Because he had the. I think the crown is going to be the thing that's going to have had something to do with this, where the crown is going to give him the, you know, the what is allowing him to channel the multiverse the way he did has something to do with that gem in the crown that was used, in the Enchiridion. I think that that's what it comes down to. Again, just speculation based on 2 episodes, but that's how I would interpret it. But I do like both of these episodes. I think they're entertaining. I think it's interesting that they lead off with that episode that is kind of like that one from season 4. Because I think too, it's like when we think back on Adventure Time as a major thing, there are 2 things that really stand out. Like there are 2 key moments I think that exist for the fandom, or at least as I recall. There was the moment with with that where people went absolutely apeshit over how it ended, and it's like, holy shit, that's cool, and what's going on here, and it felt like they were building something cool, and then you get the idea of, well, I think people started falling off by the time that the Citadel happened, where they reveal Finn's father and all of that. It's an interesting, like, goddamn, I want to rewatch that show completely again, from beginning to end. Like, I'm interested to see where they go this season. I'm interested to see how this kind of plays out, and I hope this goes on for more than one season, because it feels like the show has aged into where we are now, which is interesting, considering that, like, Adventure Time was very much the springboard for a bunch of other shows that came after it, in so much as this idea of playing with continuity in a major way in a kids' TV show. Like, we had continuity before in kids' TV shows, where it's like, think like, Fairly Odd Parents, which would add characters and stuff like that. So there was something resembling a continuity to it, but it wasn't anything major. The same goes for, like, Jimmy Neutron, which had character relationships evolve over time. But Adventure Time was the first to build lore and expand on lore and really be a exercise in world building in a show for kids. And then other shows that came after, Over the Garden Wall, Infinity Train, took that and expanded on it and built on it in different ways, and added, not to make it entirely a mystery, but it is a very different experience from watching these other, from watching Adventure Time and watching Infinity Train are 2 different things. And to that end, I think that it's kind of an interesting conundrum to be put in. But regardless, like, what we come to with this is, in a world where Adventure Time is now pulling from the shows that came after it too, because that's kind of what we're getting a little bit here, is this, how is this working, what's going to happen, and what's going on broadly. That comes more from the shows that were inspired by Adventure Time, from your Steven Universe, from your, from your Infinity Train, from your Over the Garden Wall, that kind of thing. And I think that, to an extent, it does make for interesting television to do it that way. But yeah, we will definitely be keeping track of this show as it continues on. It's very entertaining. There are a lot of really funny moments. Like, the entire dynamic between Finn and Simon when they go on their mission is so fun. Where it's like, Finn is, what was it? Finn is trying to, what's what we're looking for here, to get him excited to go on this adventure, and Simon's like, I really don't want to. At this point, like, they draw Simon with crow's feet around, so he's kind of old now. And he's like, I really don't want to do this. And he just gets the crap beaten out of him on the entire trip. And there's a genuine, like, original Adventure Time energy to that episode that really works, even if it does feel weird that Finn has kind of not progressed as a character since then. I mean, Jake is, dead because Jake is a dog, and now Jake's son has taken over adventuring with Finn. but at the same time, it's like I don't think that there is a what's it called? There is a key. What's the word I'm looking for here? Um, like it doesn't feel different enough where it's off-putting. It feels like you've jumped right back into like that episode where Finn and Jake are adventuring in the what's it called? Are adventuring in the um, when they find that monster that the bears are living in the stomach of, Andy Samberg, back in like season 2 or 3, or the episode with the maze that came right after, both of which are hilarious episodes, which I think to this day are still really funny. But yeah, I think that this is a solid show. This is a very solid show. I would recommend checking it out if you like the original Adventure Time. And if what I'm saying about what happened in the original show sounds like a lot, I would say I think that as a historical document, which sounds like I'm giving it an unneeded level of grandiosity. As a historical document, Adventure Time is a worthwhile watch. As a piece of legacy media that it is shaped or reshaped how we as a people, watch TV. As an exercise in that, it's worth watching. As an exercise in anything else, like even if like yeah, early and it's got the same issue that what's it called has that like Clone Wars has or Rebels has, where the first season kinda, not the strongest, I would say. Um, and to an extent, you probably could just skip to like Mortal Folly, Mortal Recoil, and start from there. Or really, I mean, there's a Billy introduction episode before that. I don't know. I would say it's worth a watch. And they're only 15-minute episodes or 11-minute episodes because they would put two into a half hour. So it's worth what's it called? It's worth a watch. But we'll wrap up there for today. Tomorrow we will be doing what was that show over on what was it called? The show over on Max. Can't remember that. Oh, My Adventure with Superman. We'll be wrapping that up tomorrow with the last 2 episodes that we didn't do it last week. We'll be doing Telemarketers on Monday, and then we're gonna do Tuesday. We're gonna do Wheel of Time. I think Wheel of Time is out. Should be out because the review embargo lifted yesterday. It's gotta be out. But like, I've seen like no marketing for it, which is not a great sign going into a second season. Especially considering like I go to the movies on a weekly basis, or at least once a week, if not twice, and they have that that thing that they put out from what's it called? From what was the company? From Amazon, where they showcase a bunch of their stuff. Meanwhile, it's like, they have Joffrey in there because you can bundle in Max, but they don't have a reference. They have like 1 or 2 references to Wheel of Time, which just feels weird to me. But we'll wrap up there for today. Until our next episode, have a great rest of your week. Good morning and welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam on this, a very cloudy, I guess would be the right way to put it, overcast Friday. Doesn't feel like Friday because it is a short week, because it was Labor Day this week. But here we are. We're going to talk about Fionna and Cake, episodes 3 and 4, which feel distinctly adventure. Now, my one thing is about this. The episode 3 opens with Finn and Jake on an adventure. I don't recall it dovetailing back in to the main plot. But one of the things I am gathering is, if not for Jake's death, a lot of what's going on here doesn't quite happen the way it does. Because Jake and Prismo were close friends, and Prismo's all depressed. He doesn't have anyone, there. Prismo being an extra-dimensional being that can grant wishes. And I've always been a fan of the more cosmic Adventure Time stuff that they do. I've always liked, like, even going back to the original show, anytime they really decided to dive kind of deeply into the more fantastic and cosmic, those were the episodes I liked more than the ones that are closer to high fantasy. Um, and when you look at these two episodes, um, it is entirely about bringing us to a point where it's like, okay, so here's what the plot of the season is going to be. And considering it's a 10-episode season, I think taking 4 out of 10 episodes to get to that point might be a little long. Because if this was a 5-episode, hour-long series, it's just taking 2/5 of the season, 40% of the season, to be like, okay, so our plot is we need to get Fionna and Cake back to their universe and with the magic restored. I saw someone posit the fan theory that ended up being correct about how this show is working, and it wasn't me, which was interesting, where it was like, because it was in Simon's head, when the magic went out of Simon's head, it changed the world and made it normal. So, I think making him the Ice King again is a choice, but I think that the only time that making him the Ice King again would be a worthwhile endeavor would be if Betty came back. Like, if it was one or the other, if he had to be the Ice King and if that happened, then Betty would return. That would be an interesting kind of, like, approach to this whole thing. I think that would be a lot of, like, because then you can bring back it is inherently a tragic story where he has to give up his own sanity to save everyone else. It is inherently a kind of, sad story, but I think that dovetailing it in, like, him making that choice without having Betty there means a lot more than if he would have to do it on his own. And I think that's kind of where this show is right now. What else have we got? I also really like, it feels kind of like John Wick in a weird way, where the idea of the cosmic, the auditor for the gods coming to check on Prismo is really an interesting idea. The Scarab. I like him as a villain. And again, I said it earlier, I like anytime they get into the more cosmic stuff with Adventure Time, and I think that this villain is one of those things, where it's like, he's not really a villain, it's like there are rules to establishing the universe. Like, those rules exist for a reason. And for him to, be this guy and be like, you created this alternate reality for yourself, not for anyone else. Like, that kind of thing is, kind of interesting as a antagonistic, force. And I kind of want to see where that goes. It feels a little bit like the guy that Ben Mendelsohn voiced on Infinity Train, if we're being honest, and that worked out really well. I think for the Scarab to be that's a cool way to handle cool way to handle the villain. What else was there? I think the show does a pretty solid job of setting up who this is and what he's going to do. And a lot of the more cosmic stuff is pretty cool, too. Like, I love the room where you can see the two time beings smashing each other with hammers to create the gong noise that creates the flow of time across the multiverse. Like, let's be real, Chekhov's, giant cosmic creatures is going to come into play. These things are going to come into play later in the season, I feel like. And I just feel like, the amount of times they came back and they were like, oh, this is cool. Look at this. This causes the flow of time. And considering how much we see, Finn have an active role in the show, I think there's a chance that we use this to, and if we need to do that, to push back, push Simon. As for where they ended up, what universe they ended up in, I think this is going to end up being the universe from the episode Finn the Human, which was, I think, the season 4 premiere. I think it was a season 4 premiere. Or the season 5 premiere, I'm sorry. Where after Finn and Jake reached Prismo, Finn created a universe in which the nothing bad happened, and his family was still alive, and all of that. That was what I got from this, if that's going to be the universe that they're going to do. And if we're going to be doing this kind of multiverse hopping thing where we get to see variants of all the characters, that could be interesting for the next few episodes. I'm excited. I do like what they did with this up until this point. I'm interested to see where they kind of go from here to establish what they can do with this new world. I'm not going to hold my breath they're going to cross over with Marvelous Adventures of Flapjack anytime soon, even though that was clearly referenced in this episode. I do like, too, one of the other things is I do like that Finn's dad was one of the people that that the Scarab was going after. And his mugshot, he got both middle fingers up. I thought that was kind of amusing. But yeah, I mean, this is a solid show. A very solid, show. I think it is. It's one of those things where it's like we've talked about this in the past with things like Creed and stuff like that, where it's like you watch this movie and this movie is so good that you want to go back and watch the original right after, and they do that. I just wish that Netflix would put or not Netflix, Max would do a better job with promoting the original Adventure Time after watching this in Distant Lands, after watching this, instead of whatever the Discovery stuff is that they're pushing right after it, which I think kind of encapsulates the entire reason that they separated Max and or they merged Max into Discovery and then dropped the HBO from the name. It was to put everything on the same playing field. It's kind of fucked up. All the schlock from all the Discovery networks and TLC and all of that are like putting it on even field. Like even if you go in and you go to the HBO, You go to the HBO thing, and then if you hit the top series button, it will bring you to all series and put them all next to each other. And I'm like, I'm not going through every fucking series to try and find something. But lo and behold, you have to go through to find, you have to scroll down the screen to find the second button that's that series. And it's like, great, cool, that's just the HBO series. And by the way, while we're at it, with Real Sports ending, why is there only 2 seasons of Real Sports on Max? Like, I saw an article, because Real Sports is ending, Real Sports with Brian Gumbel, and it's a great show if you haven't watched it. It's an investigative journalism show, but entirely about sports. So they go out and they do investigations into people and organizations, stuff like that. They've broken some really big stories in the past, like corruption with the IOC. They've broken stories about, they've won, what was the other one? NBA stuff. They've broken, there was a child slave trade in Saudi Arabia they broke a story about. Like, they've done some huge work. They've won Peabody Awards. They know what they're doing there. And one of the things that really, struck a nerve with me is seeing the praise being heaped on by the chief of HBO. Like, oh my god, the show is groundbreaking, the show is major, it did a lot of great things for not just HBO, but for sports as a whole, and I would agree. And I was like, you know what, maybe I'll go back and start watching some of these old episodes, because the show is 29 seasons long. It started when I was either, very young or before I was born. And I was like, you know what, maybe I'll go in and watch some of this and start from the beginning and, watch some of these older episodes about it. And I go in and there's only 2 seasons. I'm like, why the fuck are there only 2 seasons? Why wouldn't you just put it all up here? If this show is a major work of, of journalism, and like I would say more than some of the other things that have happened, like more than some of the other cuts, I would say this is the most egregious, one of the more egregious cuts from Max, or limitations on Max. Like because there's no good reason why you wouldn't just have them all up there. But we will wrap up there for today. So we might be seeing Aristotle and Dante discover secrets of the universe tonight. I have to look at the schedule and see if I can fit that in. If not, we might do that tomorrow and cut My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 altogether. Only because in the past, rom-coms haven't performed well on the show, with one exception. But by and maybe we'll keep My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 on as kind of the bellwether, like as kind of the we have, we'll test it with this to see if it, see if this does as well as some of the others, because we also did Zoe 102, and that did fairly well for us. And what was the other one? That also served pretty well. No Hard Feelings. It's also a rom-com to an extent. So maybe we'll give it a shot. But yeah, either way, we got we'll figure it out. But maybe we move Aristotle and Dante to tomorrow, and then My Big Fat Greek Wedding to next week at some point, because next week we have Dumb Money. Next week we have, what was the other one? A Haunting in Venice. So maybe we'll also put that there. I don't know. I'll look at the schedule. I'll figure it out, and we'll see what works and what makes sense. But beyond that, our next episode will be either today or tomorrow. We will be doing the last batch of Pokemon episodes now that Pokemon to Be a Pokemon Master is now available on the Netflix. So that will be, we will be watching that and getting into that. But yeah. Check out Fionna and Cake. If you're enjoying Fionna and Cake, I would say this is definitely where if you liked Adventure Time as a kid, you will definitely find something to enjoy in this show. There's definitely something there where it's like it feels the same, but feels aged up a little bit, where, you have a little bit of blood, you have a little bit of cursing, but not an egregious amount to the point where you're like, this just feels ridiculous. But yeah, it is a fairly solid show. I would say check it out. It's available on Max now. But until our next episode, have a great rest of your week. Good afternoon, evening, well, it's 5 o'clock, evening, and welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. On this Friday, so we got I was going to do it earlier, but I had to go to the dentist, and I had never been to the dentist before, so I had to use my GPS. And by the time I got there, I was like, alright, let me, go do that. Then I left, and I was like, alright, let me get lunch before I go to work. And then I got lunch, and then I was like, alright, well, I'm going to be at work in 10 minutes, so we'll just record this later. And here we are. Tonight we still have, in the evening, an episode about A Haunting in Venice, which I'm actually on my way to go see now. Like, that's what I'm in my car to do after work. And so we have A Haunting in Venice tonight. And tomorrow, Josie and I will be recording an episode of Exploring Hyperspace Lanes. So, fun times all around. Anyway, here we are. And one of the things that we're going to talk about Fionna and Cake the next 2 episodes, and I gotta say, I think this is the first time we've really explicitly bumped into a a canon issue with the existence, and even then it's like, all right, well, like, we're dealing with, like, I like the term that, like, it's a weird kind of paradox in general. Like, the existence in crossover in season 7 to begin with was a crossover, was a paradox. So to bring it in and be like, okay, we need to do this, it doesn't quite add up. And I like that episode. Go back and watch Crossover if you haven't watched it. There's an episode in season 7. It's after Stakes, where Prismo enlists Finn and Jake to go back to Farm World and stop the Lich, which is Jake in that world, from going into and taking over the getting out of that universe and getting to Prismo to use his wish to take out all life in the multiverse. And they succeed, and the Lich's hand ends up all over the multiverse, which now includes the Misadventures of Flapjack, the marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack. So it's a cool idea, and now we've gone back to Farm World, and we pick up after where now Finn hasn't used the crown in a while, and the crown doesn't have any power, and it creates a cool thing where Finn, like, I think one of the things the show is doing really kind of well is taking ideas that and playing with the multiverse in a way that is kind of unique, where it's like, we're dealing, like, this is ostensibly going to end up being Simon's story. This is going to be the story of Simon becoming what's it called? Like, it's about him making the choice to become the Ice King again. And to that end, if he's going to go out and become the Ice King again, what does that mean for him? What kind of sacrifice is that? And for him to find a kindred spirit in Finn is kind of interesting. Because the Finn of Farm World is in a similar situation, where he had the crown, no longer has the crown, but retains the memories of his time with the crown. So what does that mean for him? And how does that work out? And with this scenario, it is a little bit on the cool side to have all that kind of, playing against each other in this episode. Then comes the issue of, what does this look like on a, from a different standpoint, where, what about things like the broader kind of, issue of, what's it called? Like, what's the word for here? The broader kind of question of, like, and then on top of that, for the next episode to be Ice King in another universe where you have a version of him that has conquered the crown in a very... Oh, what was the other show that did something? Oh, The Flash is what this kind of reminded me of. In Season 8, right before Crisis. Because right before Crisis, there is the episode Last Temptation of Barry Allen, which is one of those episodes, there were a few of these over the course of that show, where they basically just give Barry, they gave Grant a lot of runway to just be like, you know what? We're going to let you run shit today. You're going to be the one who's going to be the heart and soul of the story. I mean, your name is on the show. It's your character who's the lead. We're going to let you do it. And when those episodes came, like The Runaway Dinosaur, like that, there was another one, Into the Speed Force, in Season 3, I think it was. Those are among the show's best episodes. And one of these was The Last Temptation of Barry Allen Part 1, which tells the story of Barry looking at, his impending sacrificing crisis, and what that would mean. Like, the entirety of Season 8 up until that, or Season 7 up until that, is Barry coming to terms with the fact that he will have to die in Crisis. Like, when it is him coming to terms with the inevitability of his own death. And him acknowledging it and compartmentalizing it and being like, look, but until then, I got to do everything I can to help out. And you get this episode where Barry is put into this situation where it's like, okay, so if me and him and Bloodsport join forces, you don't have to do that. You don't have to have that outcome. And it's kind of the same thing here, where we get this world where it's like, look, you can see that there is a way around this, but it requires X, Y, and Z to happen. And so it's Ice King looking in, or not Ice King, Simon looking and being like, I don't know if I necessarily need to do that. And I think that's a really strong thing going into this. Especially considering there are only 2 episodes left from here. Like, after this, it's just a finale and the 1 more episode. I think it's only 8 episodes. And now we're through 6. Maybe it's 10. But I think a lot of that is really interesting to come at it from this place of, like, he's looking at all of these other things, all of these other ways that things could happen. Should he be the one who is, should he, complete his mission to save Fionna and Cake's world? And how does that impact him? And it is him looking through and being like, you know what, I'm still going to do the right thing. And I think that the one thing we haven't quite gotten to yet, the one thing we haven't quite acknowledged, is that there's an elephant in the room in the form of Betty, where we haven't quite gotten to the point where Betty has to, he has to reconcile that aspect. And for someone who was dealing with that early on in the season, I think that that's something that we need to get to and move beyond for Simon. He needs to either put that behind him or reconcile that in some other way before he makes this choice to go back in there and complete the tragic downfall after his redemption. Or go another direction entirely. In which case, let's see where they go. But I do think that they do need to that is the key part of this that needs to be reconciled. And I don't think they've done enough of that yet. It's kind of, what was that other show where it's like, it was Secret Invasion had a similar thing where the wife of I forgot her name, Talos' wife, who got who was killed off screen. We never really reconcile with that. We never really live in get to see these characters actually deal with the impact of that in a meaningful way. It's kind of just fodder to start to start things off. But there is no, that's what I had to do. But there is no real moving forward and being like, okay, we're doing this, for whatever reason. And to that end, we do end up in this weird place where it's like, let's have this mean something to him on that level, because that is still the thing that we need to see him kind of acknowledge and either accept it, acknowledge and internalize it, or acknowledge it and move past it. But without that, the season's gonna be feeling like it's missing something. Because while it is Fionna and Cake, and Fionna and Cake are the title characters, they are very much the audience's way in for a lot of what's happening. A lot of what this show is looking around at what is happening in the world, or in the multiverse of Adventure Time, and letting Fionna and Cake go on this adventure with the intent to be like, oh, all this cool stuff is happening. Let's, and their reactions is the audience kind of being like, oh, cool, we'll do that. Not that that's a bad thing. I'm not saying that's inherently bad or inherently a wrong way to tell a story. I'm just saying that it puts you in a weird place where, if Simon's going to be the main character, we need to have a clearer kind of, what's it called? A clearer kind of look at what that means for the show. And if we're going to make Simon the main character, then we need to have something happen to emotionally resonate with Simon. And I think that's just one place the show is kind of, we're getting a lot of it, don't get me wrong, but there's this other entire facet of the character, as well as the fact that there's also the issue where, he hasn't really had to deal. No, because he dealt with Did he deal with? No, he dealt with Marceline in Distant Lands. Not here. We haven't seen that aspect either, and that's another big part. That would be that's the other thing that needs to be addressed, I think. But yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying the show. And we talked about it with Creed back in, very early on in the history of this show. I mean, within the first 20 episodes, we did Creed. And it was one of those things where I went and I sat there and I left that movie theater and I was like, this made me want to go and watch all the Rocky movies again. Like, knowing what happens in the later Rocky movies and knowing they go a little off the rails and knowing that some of them aren't as good as the others, despite all of that, I still want to go back and watch the Rocky movies after watching Creed. And that's an achievement in and of itself, is that you have made me go back and do that. And it's the same thing with this. I rewatched Adventure Time recently, and still, every once in a while, I will go back and watch, Adventure Time. I think we talked about it a little bit with iCarly, too, where I jumped in Season 3, and watching iCarly every week made me go, all right, let me go back and watch the earlier seasons. And to that end, I think that, it's a little different. But I think we'll wrap up there for today. Our next episode will be on, what's it called? Our next episode will be later today. We'll talk about A Haunting in Venice, the new Kenneth Branagh, Hercule Poirot mystery. So, based on an Agatha Christie novel. We'll be talking about that tonight. Tomorrow we'll be talking about Wheel of Time, the new episode of Wheel of Time that went up this morning. That I have not watched yet, but we will be, I will watch it, later tonight. And I feel like there was one other thing that I'm forgetting. I can't remember what it is, though. Not the first time this has happened today. Not the first time this has happened this hour. Just kind of happens sometimes. What else we got? We know what movies we're going to be covering, I think, by and large, for, film festivals or in the later part of this year. So the first one we're going to do, maybe it is before its theatrical release. Maybe the theatrical release comes sooner. I don't know. I don't know the exact. I saw the trailer before Dumb Money for the Persian version, which looked pretty good. It was a Sundance. I think it won the Sundance Jury Award or the Sundance Dramatic Competition Award. I'll be seeing that, and I will also be seeing Fancy Dance, which is a movie with Lily Gladstone. They're both in the dramatic competition, I think, at Hamptons Film Festival, so we'll be seeing both of those, and we'll be reporting back with that, because I've never seen Lily Gladstone in anything, and she's going to be a lead in, in Killers of the Flower Moon. So I would like to see her in something else. Not that I want to, I don't know, this Scorsese guy, he doesn't know what he's doing when it comes to cats. It's not that at all. It's just, I want to be able to sit there and I want to see what he can do, and I want to see, I'm interested to see how that movie is, with her in it. But yeah, we will wrap up there for today. And until our next episode, have a great rest of your week. Good morning, and welcome to Beware Spoilers. I am Adam on this Friday morning. So, let's, address the elephant in the room when it comes to Fionna and Cake. Fionna and Cake is handling the idea of What If, which started out as a comic and then went to an animated show on Disney Plus for Marvel. It's handling it a lot better than What If did on Disney Plus. Not the comics. The comics are fine. But these last two episodes have been real what ifs. And I think, once again, we're going to be nearing this issue with Simon and Betty is going to come to a head at some point in the future. But these two episodes are alternate universes based on things we know about and events we know about, where one thing changes and then we see the reverberations years down the line. So, the first episode of the two is the one where Simon dies. Simon dies during the what's it called, during the onslaught, or at some point during the apocalypse, after the mutagenic bomb goes off and the world gets destroyed and things start to change, Simon dies. And because Simon is dead, he doesn't have Marceline doesn't have someone to look up to, and to teach her right from wrong. So Marceline becomes leader of the vampires, or the Vampire Queen, which is how she was introduced when she first showed up. So she has all that going on. Meanwhile, she is at war with Princess Bubblegum, who is leading freedom fighters fighting against the vampire threat. And let me just say, everything about this episode is fantastic. Because everything that happens feels like it's traceable back to them not meeting, and then everything else kind of goes with it. I'm not 100%, maybe I'm just remembering wrong, but I don't remember how Finn's dad was related to all this. But him being there and fighting with her, and then there being baby Finn there is kind of cool. I appreciate all that. And it's such an interesting episode, that first one. And then to do that with a juxtaposition with the episode, with the other timeline where it's what's going on in Fionna and Cake's world with Marshall and I forgot what the name for alternate Prince Bubblegum, what his human name is, but to have that happen at the same time is really interesting. And to have Hudson be the one who has the crown, and he's the one wearing the crown, and it's an interesting kind of approach to the whole situation where it's like, I think that what's it called? I think that that episode works very well for that. But they released the episode the same day as the one right after. And the one right after, I feel there's just as much to talk about, because going back to season 4, and I think we've talked about this a few times, where it's like season 4 ended up getting used in Thor, because it's the same plot as Thor: Love and Thunder. So going back to that, you have this idea where they want to get to the center of the multiverse. Billy comes to Finn and is like, look, we need to get to the center of the multiverse, and is like, when we get there, we can get the Lich, we can get rid of the Lich by doing that. His plan is something that Finn should have been a little suspect of, because the plan was to open the portal into the multiverse and then throw the Lich into the portal, and it's like, why would you do that? If there is someone at the center of the multiverse that can grant a wish to do anything he wants, that feels like a dumb idea, but whatever, it is what it is. So they go around and they collect up all the gems from all the crowns, like Princess Bubblegum's crown, like what's it called, like Ice King's crown, all that kind of stuff. And then they put it all into the Anti-Radiant. The Anti-Radiant opens the portal, and then they go to what's it called? Then they go to they go into the multiverse, get to what's it called? Get to Prismo. Prismo informs them that the Lich used his wish to eradicate all life, and so Finn's like, all right, so I'll use my wish to make the Lich, never exist, which creates Farm World. Jake, because he was there, also gets a wish, but Jake is hanging out with Prismo the whole time. And they're just trying to, it's him, Prismo, and the Cosmic Owl hanging out, watching what's happening, eating pickles. It's a fun time all around where they watch Finn struggle in Farm World. And the whole thing that goes along with this is Jake uses his wish to undo to undo the Lich's by wishing that the Lich's wish was to send Finn and Jake back home. Which is an interesting way to approach the problem. However, we also have learned in the years since, between crossover and earlier this season, we have learned that just because a wish is changed or undone doesn't mean the universe created is also destroyed. Because while that happened, Finn, the farm world, still existed. So in season 7, Finn and Jake go to farm world to stop the Lich there, which is Jake, from escaping into the multiverse and destroying all life, using the help of Finn, who has the crown. And from there, we've learned there that world didn't go away. And then earlier this season on Fionna and Cake, they visit farm world. They go over there, and it's like, here's what happened. So it makes sense that there would still be a universe out there where the Lich's wish happened, where the Lich was like, hey, I wish to eliminate all life in the multiverse, and he's successful. So that's what this universe is. It's this universe where all life has been eliminated, and except for him, because he made the wish, and BMO, because BMO's a robot and technically not alive. And they encounter BMO first. And they work with BMO, and they're wandering through the wasteland trying to figure out what happened, and they see the video from Ice King, and him and his video diary, and then it just, all of a sudden, it's just, he turns into a skeleton, one frame at the very end, and it's like, oh, holy shit, that is something. Something, that's kind of the first indication you get that this is a world where something fucked up happened. Because nothing's destroyed, it's just, he just became a skeleton. And it is an interesting kind of thing that happened there. And then, as this episode goes on, and as we go through, it's like, he's referring to his friend, and it's like, oh, he's talking about probably someone not real. And then they get to the person. Not because BMO leaves them there, because BMO ends up sacrificing himself to try and power up the remote, so that way they can get to another universe where the crown exists. That way they can continue their quest to get the crown, turn Ice King, turn Simon back into the Ice King, and they can go back home to their world. They go to, it doesn't work. And BMO dies, but they go and they're now in this thing, and then they find the person, and it's the Lich wearing Billy's skin, but it's deteriorating because it's decomposing, and it's just, oh, right, that is fantastic. That is such a great choice for this show that I'm like, oh, that is genius. Because now you can take this character, who is one of the biggest recurring bad guys on this show. I would say the Lich is one of the biggest recurring bad guys in Adventure Time. You have this guy who can, what's it called? Who can, whose entire thing is he wants to eliminate all life, and he's incredibly powerful, and we're gonna unleash him again. And I think that he's going to end up facing off against, I think Fiona's end up facing off against his version of the Lich. And that's going to be where this show kind of ends. It's going to be that kind of, story. And I think it's a really interesting kind of approach to the whole thing. I would be interested to see if we get another appearance from Finn and Jake in a similar capacity. Because, once the multiverse gets fixed and everything gets reestablished, it's like, look, Fionna and Cake went back to their own universe at the end of this episode, so is that just going to be the end for that? I would assume not. I would say probably not. I think it would be a safe bet that they are going to find a way back out of that universe at some point between now and, the end of the show. And I think that this Lich, and I think that there is one continuity error, and we'll get that in a little bit. I think that this Lich, who knows about the power of the multiverse, will, and has now seen that the wish wasn't successful. Like, he made his wish, but it wiped out all life in his universe, but not all life in the multiverse. Which would be interesting. And I really like how they dive into the origin of Simon and Betty's relationship. And I think that is why we're going to get into this idea of, Simon's gonna have to deal with Betty in a meaningful way, I think, at some point. And that's gonna be the thing that he's gotta make peace with. And I think it's gonna be perpetually you have these two, neither one can be normal while the other is also normal. Like, always one of them has to be messed up in some way, displaced by time. Ice King needs to be, needs to have his, he needs to be the Ice King and be crazy. Or Betty is an ancient being of chaos, or something like that. You're never going to get to a point, I don't think, with these two characters where they can just be happy. It's going to be this eternal, passing of two ships in the night of sanity. And I think that there may be a moment where the two of them, like, that could be the thing where they do finally get peace. But I don't know if that's going to be where the show goes. I'm very interested to see that, though. Because that's a big part of this that needs to be addressed. Is how does that deal with, how do we deal with the wider implications of this? What else was there? The one continuity error, I think, and I could be wrong about this, which is really impressive if we're being honest. The amount of stuff that they're calling back to years and years and years and years later. When they make the wish, it's the middle of the night. Ice King's asleep. Ice King's crown jewel got stolen. And to the point where when the crown jewels are returned, Dragon Ball style, after they use the Anti-Radiant to go into the multiverse, and after they get back, when that's returned, his crown still does not have it. He is doing, the dog shaming of his penguin. Not that that's important, but he had his crown fully together. It's a really dumb, nitpicky thing. But it's interesting. Maybe that plays into it somewhere, because I feel like I gotta give them the benefit of the doubt a little bit, because they've been doing such good things that end up paying off later. We gotta see that. And I think what could have been interesting with this is this idea that, or it could just be like, oh, they got returned immediately after they left in this world. Who cares? It's not a big deal. But yeah, there is a lot of cool stuff that happens in this episode. A lot of cool, what if scenarios that play out in interesting ways. Because even what could have been a dull episode, in terms of building out that world. And there's a very real chance where you could have done that, where all life's eliminated. But it's to have BMO be there, and to have BMO be like, well, football stopped existing too. I haven't seen her in a while, and it's oh, so that's weird. It's like that's a weird part of it too, where it's like, oh, that stopped working, and then it's like for him to only be able to access parts of his memory about what happened when, what's it called, when he's channeling other people. Like, he goes in and, like, they go to Princess Bubblegum's lab, and she's long dead at this point, but because everyone's dead, and for him to go in and start channeling her and start acting like her, and it's like, that's the only way you get it now. It's like, oh yeah, something happened, one day everyone was here, then everyone turned into skeletons. And it's like, oh, like, for that to be something he can only access in that situation, it's like, oh, he's dealing with a trauma here. And it's an interesting thing to have to put your character through. But yeah, I mean, I'm really loving Fionna and Cake. I think I've made that abundantly clear at this point. The show is doing a lot of what I was hoping it would do. And a lot of things that, I wasn't, like, I didn't go into this expecting it to be. I expected this to be more of a, like, maybe PG-13 Adventure Time. But I don't think that it is a, what's it called? I think it's a pretty solid show, on its own. And doing this multiverse hopping thing is pretty cool. And I think of the shows that are currently ongoing, like, between this and Ahsoka and Wheel of Time, this is the one that I'm most excited for on a week-to-week basis. This is the one where I'm like, okay, let's jump into it. Let's see, what's happening here. And I'm interested to see where this story continues. But we will wrap up there for today. Tonight we'll be seeing Expendables, which is one of those movies where it's so bad that you get all those headlines where it's like all the various news outlets are trying to jump on the funniest headline for how bad the movie is. To which I say, let's see. I saw Cracked had it like, it's Mission Impossible for morons, and I'm like, all right, I'm in. Let's see this. Let's see how bad this is. And then there's also this week I'm going to see Stop Making Sense. Next week we have The Creator, and 2 weeks Loki begins. So we'll be back on the Marvel Studios train until and that'll take us straight up to Captain Marvel, or the Marvels. But we will wrap up there for today. And until our next episode, have a great rest of your week. Good morning, and welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. On this, we're back to it being rainy Friday. Today, we're going to talk about the finale of Fionna and Cake. And I've been saying it the whole time the show was going on. They do need to deal with the Betty issue. And I'm not sure how I feel about how they resolved it. I don't think that having Betty... See, I wasn't looking for an answer where, Betty was going to separate from the Chaos God. That was, and think about where the show started, and not Fionna and Cake, I mean Adventure Time in general, where it's like, these things all kind of make sense, but I was kind of looking for, I got what I was looking for, actually, if we're really being honest. All I wanted was Simon to have to deal with, and get that chance to talk to Betty, even if Betty didn't really respond. And Betty is obviously still in there, because she's doing everything in her power to save Simon, which is admittedly a lot of power. And the way she dispatches the Lich is so cool early in the episode. Because, like, you think that's going to be the big thing here, but no, it's just the Lich gets handled. But either way, the show goes on, and it's one of those things where it's like, I think that everything that they did in this finale kind of tracks. I do feel like a 2-part finale wasn't quite long enough, because it doesn't feel like it was set up properly. I don't feel like going into this episode there was enough time to set up everything that needed to get done in this episode. I don't feel like there was enough there to be like, okay, we are going to set up, what's it called? We're going to set up, he's going to go meet Rob, and then we're going to have all of this, you know, all of this other stuff. Like, I don't feel like there's enough time for all that. And then for that to also be split with what's going on in Fionna and Cake's world, which eventually becomes canonized, like, it's interesting. I kind of want to see another season. Even though this show does kind of wrap up with a neat bow, where it's like Fionna and Cake now have their own universe outside of Simon's head. Like, I kind of want to see this universe continue and see more stories. Like, I don't know if you can do more stories in that world. Because I don't know how interesting that would be to just see them living normal lives with Cake, the talking stretchy cat. I don't know how interesting that would be, per se. But I would like to see more stuff happen. And I think one of the other things that I do really enjoy about this show is, I think, too, that the way that they lay out everything that happens, they've been revisiting a lot of stuff. I'm surprised they didn't revisit the bunnies, but like, to go to, you know, something I never thought they'd reference again, and bring back the guy who plays young Adam on what's it called, on the Goldbergs, to voice him. That, you know, the future time. I would watch a show based in the future time about what's going on there with those two. You know, the Rainicorn and the little other dude whose name I'm forgetting. Like, to have it all based in that, where Simon has to, you know, go there and try to figure it out, and then make peace with the fact that this isn't the solution, is interesting in and of itself. I think it's very well done, the finale. I think that this was an interesting way to send off this show, and it makes me want more. I want to be able to go back to this world more and more, because of how vast and unique the world and the multiverse around Adventure Time is. I want to see more stories in that space, and there's plenty of room to tell those stories. So I just think that that's an interesting kind of, you know, approach to, you know, to telling this. And I don't know, I'm going to keep this one kind of short, because I think that it's like, you get what you're looking for out of it, in the resolution of Simon and Betty's arc. And I think that that's the thing, too, is that it's a Fionna and Cake show, but Fionna and Cake are kind of not the point of the show. The show is kind of about Simon, you know, making peace with who he is in this future time where he doesn't belong. Because Simon is the man out of time. And he explains that in the episode, where he's like, I squandered that opportunity you gave me, by bringing me back. Which is a really great moment for him. And I think the show does a great job of doing that, and then giving him a resolution where he can go back to living in Ooh, and having that be, you know, a thing. I do want to see that future time story, though. Like, I really want to see that story, though, because that world where it is more, like, you know, cyberpunky, like, it's pretty cool. And the, what was it, future Choose Goose being Pawn Swan and then flipping them off is probably the funniest moment in the episode. Like, that was the thing, like, that made me laugh out loud. Because of that character is so fucking ridiculous. It is just great. But we'll keep this one short. We'll wrap up there for today. I am on my way to work now, actually. Another joyous Friday. It's one of those things where it's like there's a Nick Offerman stand-up bit where he's talking about I think it was a Nick Offerman bit where he's like, think about how I think it was stand-up. I could be totally wrong on both counts, but he's like, think about how wild it is that we as a people kind of are like, oh, thank God the week's over, and it's like that's 5 out of 7 days of your life. 5 out of every 7 days of your life, you're like, thank God that's over. I think about that sometimes as I'm driving to work in this rain. But yeah, we will wrap up there for today. We have a slight change of plans to our film festival coverage in 2 weeks. Saturday, we'll be doing a short series, State of the Union it's called, out of Hampton Film Festival. State of the Union is short films about the current state of politics, so get the fuck ready for that if you are someone who doesn't like politics in movies and stuff like that. I think they're fictionalized. I don't think they're all I think some are documentaries, but I don't think all of them are. And then the other one is, and hopefully this time there's none about surfing, because it's nothing against the 2 surfing documentaries. I had nothing against them. I liked both of them. I thought one of them was a really interesting kind of experimental, music video type thing, and the other one was a really heartfelt story about this kid who was coming to who was learning about himself and learning about his disability and coming into his own as a person through surfing, and both of those are great. The guy in front of me, who visibly did not want to be there last year when I saw these two, groaned loudly after the second one, which is the music video, and he goes, the next one better not be about fucking surfing. And I'm like, why did you come? If you're gonna sit here and make snide comments the whole time and eat Reese's Pieces, like, just don't come. This is a very specific audience that you're here for. Like, just don't come. And hopefully this year for the movie I'm seeing, I'm thinking that this won't be as big a crowd as last year for She Said, but Fancy Dance is the movie we're going to be seeing on Sunday. I looked at the calendar. Well, it should. I didn't fuck that up twice. Fancy Dance is the movie we're seeing on Sunday. That is not one of the spotlight movies. It's not one that has a huge, a huge director attached or anything, but it does star Lily Gladstone, which is why I picked it, because I want to see her acting abilities, and I want to get a sense for who she is as an actress before seeing Killers of the Flower Moon 2 weeks later. So we'll be talking about those two next weekend. But until then, have a great rest of your week.